Good morning, church. Welcome to today's devotion. In today's devotion, we'll be in Exodus chapter 1. And in Exodus chapter 1, we see that there are 70 Israelites that came from the land of Israel to Egypt. In Genesis chapter 50, they are only 70 in number, but 40 years later, in Exodus chapter 1, they are about 3 million. And there are two reasons why the children of Israel are in Egypt. Number one is God planted the Israelites in Egypt because it was the incubation period. God was preparing the people for the promised land. And secondly, and equally important, was that God was preparing the promised land for these people. God had given Abraham a promise in Genesis chapter 15 that his descendants would number the stars in the sky and the sands on the seashore, but that would not happen until the iniquity of the Amorites and the sin of the Canaanites had reached its peak. And we see that, the Canaanites were very cruel people. They used to murder their children and offer them as sacrifices, and they used to torture each other. So when we reach Joshua chapter 1, we see that God, just wipes them out. And we see that, God has been patient with these Canaanites for 40 years. He has not just wiped them out, but He's been patient. So God has been preparing the Israelites, preparing the land, and there is a new king over the land, over Egypt, and his name is Seti I. And when we see this king, this king feels threatened. Why? Because the Hittites from the north want to attack him, and the Israelites, they are about 3 million. So there's a possibility that the Hittites can join hands with the Israelites and they can overpower him. So what happens is he persecutes the Israelites, and we all know the story. And the Israelites, when they are being persecuted, they increase in number. Now, just as Haman in the book of Esther persecuted the Jews, or Herod, at the time of Jesus was persecuting the Jews, here we see that the king of Egypt is persecuting these people. And God is allowing these people to be persecuted because as they are undergoing persecution, they are growing stronger in strength. Now, if you look at the example of someone, an athlete on a field, or a person working out in the gym, when they run or they exert their muscles or they pick up weights, the muscle gets worn out, but then at the end of it, when the muscle is repaired, the muscle can run faster, or the muscle can hold an even stronger weight. Why? Because it's been made like that to endure, tension. So here we see that God is allowing the Israelites to be persecuted. And up to now, this is not our main text, and I want you guys to focus on two women, two midwives that are mentioned over here in Exodus chapter 1, verses 15 onwards. And it says, "And the king of Egypt spoke to the midwives, Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shipra and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him, but if it be a daughter, you should let her live." So in the first place, these midwives were barren women, and because they were barren, they wanted, to help other women in delivering their children. And that was normally the custom of a midwife, that they would be barren, but they would help, and they would be the ones to help women deliver their babies. And here we see that these women are summoned by the king. And in verse 17, we see that the midwives feared God, but they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men, children alive. Now, if you look at Romans chapter 13, verses 1 to 5, it says that we are supposed to, submit to the authority of the land. And here are two women who are not submitting to the king of Egypt. Now, why is that? Because they are violating God's commands. They were not, they were doing what is right in the eyes of God. So, if we look at the example of Peter and John in Acts chapter 5, after they were beaten by the guards and told not to preach about Jesus, you know what they go out and do? They go and do the exact opposite. They go out to the street and they start preaching about Jesus. And in Acts chapter 5 verse 29, they say that, we rather follow God than follow man. What were they doing? They were preaching the same message of Psalm 118 verse 8. It says it's better to follow God than to follow man. And in verses 18 and 19 of Exodus chapter 1, the king of Egypt called the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this thing and saved the men children?" And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are lively. They already are delivering before we even come into them. Like even before we come to deliver the child, they have already delivered." Now, this is a lie that these two women, Puah and Shipra, say. But in verses 20 and 21, I want to point this out to you. We see that God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass that because the midwives feared God, he made them houses. So even though the midwives had lied, they had done something, God doesn't approve this lying, but they had done something, more precious to the Lord. They had feared him and done what was right in the sight of the Lord. So you know what? The God looked at their best and helped them, build their own houses. We see surprisingly that these barren women who could not produce children are now producing children because of the one thing, that they have done for the Lord and honored him. And, many times, we are not up to the mark, or we don't live our lives, the way we should live. But, just following the Lord up to how much we can do, God sees the good part, and he blesses us just by looking at our good side. And here we see two women. God saw the way they feared him, and God blessed them. So here's our devotion for today. Have a nice day.